The morning my wife rushed to her dying father with our daughter. I almost let them go without a second thought. Almost. But God does not let a man walk blind forever. 2 hours later, I stood outside that house with flowers in my hand and heard three voices inside: my wife, my daughter, and a man I had never met, dividing up my life like I was already in the ground. Thank you so much for being here with me. Before I begin sharing this story of my family, I would love to know more about you. Please, take a moment to leave a comment. Where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are right now? Your presence truly matters to me. Also, please note this story includes some fictional elements added for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real names or settings is purely coincidental, but the message I am sharing here is meant to be useful and real. I need to take you back to that morning. Back to before everything cracked open like a foundation poured too thin. It was a Tuesday in October. The kind of Texas morning where the heat has finally loosened its grip and the air smells like cedar and damp earth. I sat at our kitchen table on Ridgecrest Lane, both hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, watching the sun crawl over the rooftops through our back window. My boots were already by the door. Steel-toed, concrete-dusted. The same pair I had worn for 3 years because they still had life in them. That is who I am. I do not throw things away until they are truly done. My name is Robert Gallagher. Bobby to everyone who knows me. 52 years old. Owner of Gallagher Construction, a company I built from a single pickup truck and a toolbox 20 years ago. These hands have poured more concrete, framed more walls, and hung more drywall than I could ever count. Every callus on my palms tells a story of a house that stands somewhere in Austin, solid and true. Diane came downstairs in her robe, hair still damp from the shower. She kissed the top of my head the way she always did. Quick and automatic, like checking a box on a list. 20 years of marriage will do that. The passion fades into routine, and you tell yourself, routine is just love wearing comfortable clothes. Good morning, honey. She poured herself coffee, added 2 sugars, stirred 3 times. Same as always. You have that big signing today, right? The Morrison Project. $4.2 million. Biggest contract Gallagher Construction had ever been offered. A mixed-use development on the east side that would keep my crews working for 18 months straight. I had been chasing this deal for 6 months. Yeah. Meeting is at 10. Should be straightforward if their lawyers do not find something new to argue about. Shelby appeared in the doorway, our 24-year-old daughter, scrolling through her phone with one hand and reaching for the coffee pot with the other. She had moved back home 8 months ago after things fell apart at her apartment. Said she needed time to figure out her next move. I did not push. A father does not push his daughter when she is struggling. Morning, Daddy. She did not look up from her screen. You nervous about today? I never get nervous about signing papers, baby girl. I get nervous about pouring foundations in the rain. Paper is easy. She laughed. That quick, bright laugh. That sounded exactly like her mother's. I remember thinking how lucky I was. My 2 girls. Right here in this kitchen. Safe and healthy. My company about to land its biggest job. Life was good. Life was so damn good that I should have known something was wrong. Diane's phone rang at 6:47. I remember the exact time because I glanced at the clock on the microwave when she answered. Her face changed in an instant. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hand gripped the counter edge until her knuckles went white. Mom, slow down. What happened? Diane's voice climbed higher with each word. He fell? How bad is it? I was on my feet. Shelby set her phone down, eyes wide. Diane lowered the phone, her chin trembling. Bobby, it is Dad. He fell this morning. Mom thinks he broke his hip, and her sugar is spiking. She can barely stand up herself. I need to get down there right now. Earl and Patsy lived in San Antonio, 90 minutes south on Interstate 35. Earl was 77. Patsy 74, with diabetes that had been getting worse for years. A broken hip at that age could mean surgery. Complications. Maybe worse. I am coming with you. I was already reaching for my boots. No. Diane shook her head firmly. Bobby, you cannot miss this signing. $4.2 million. You have worked 6 months for this. Diane, your father is more important than any contract. I will go with Mom. Shelby was already pulling her hair back. You handle the Morrison deal, Dad. We have got this. Grandpa and Grandma need us. I looked between them. My wife, eyes red and scared. My daughter, responsible and ready. And I felt that familiar warmth in my chest. Pride. Gratitude. These were my people. My foundation. Are you sure? We are sure. Diane grabbed her purse from the hook by the door. She moved fast, efficient. Her car keys already in her hand. I will call you the moment we get there. Shelby squeezed my arm as she passed. Do not worry, Daddy. We will take care of everything. I stood in the doorway and watched them pull out of the driveway. Diane's white SUV turned left on Ridgecrest. Brake lights blinking red for just a moment before disappearing around the corner. The house went quiet. Too quiet. I walked back to the kitchen, picked up my coffee, and stood there in the silence. Shelby's charger was still plugged into the wall. Diane's crossword puzzle sat half-finished on the counter. The morning news murmured from the living room television, talking about weather and traffic and things that no longer seemed to matter. Something felt wrong. I could not name it. Could not point to a single detail that was out of place. Maybe it was the way Diane grabbed her purse a little too quick. Maybe it was how Shelby volunteered a little too eager. Maybe it was just the silence pressing in on me like walls closing. I checked the clock. 7:15. The Morrison signing was at 10. I had time. I had time to do something that would either prove me a paranoid fool or shatter everything I had built over 20 years. I grabbed my keys off the counter and walked toward the door. The drive south on Interstate 35 felt longer than 90 minutes. Every mile between Austin and San Antonio, the weight in my chest grew heavier, pressing down on my ribs like wet concrete that had not set yet. I could not explain it, could not give it a name. Just a feeling. The kind of feeling a man gets after 20 years of construction when he walks onto a job site and knows something is off before he even sees the crack in the beam. I passed through New Braunfels without really seeing it. The Comal River glinted off to my right. Families already setting up on the banks with coolers and lawn chairs. Normal people. Living normal lives. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Halfway there, I pulled off at a small shopping center just past Shirts. Walked into a grocery store and bought a bouquet of yellow roses. Patsy's favorites. She always said yellow roses reminded her of the first house she and Earl owned in Corpus Christi, the one with the yellow rose bush climbing up the porch rail. Then I ducked into the pharmacy next door. Ibuprofen, heating pads, blood sugar test strips, anything that might help until they could see a proper doctor. The pharmacist, a young woman with kind eyes, bagged everything neatly. I hope your family feels better soon, she said. Thank you. Me too. I got back in my truck with the flowers on the passenger seat and the pharmacy bag tucked behind them. The cab smelled like roses and motor oil. I pulled back onto 35 and pushed south, watching the landscape flatten and spread as San Antonio swallowed the highway into its grid of exits and overpasses. I knew the route to Earl and Patsy's place by heart. 20 years of holiday drives, birthday visits, random Sunday afternoon trips, just because Diane missed her mama's cooking. Turn right on Vance Jackson, left on Hillcrest, straight through 2 lights, then right again onto Pecan Street. The neighborhood was quiet. Old live oaks lined both sides of the road, their branches heavy with Spanish moss that swayed like gray curtains in the October breeze. Modest homes, mostly single-story ranch styles from the 1960s. Trimmed lawns, American flags, pickup trucks in driveways. Earl and Patsy's kind of neighborhood. Honest people living honest lives. I spotted the house from 3 blocks away. 847 Pecan Street. Cream-colored brick, with dark green shutters. A massive pecan tree in the front yard that Earl had planted the year they moved in, nearly 40 years ago. He used to joke that tree would outlive them all. My foot eased off the gas. The front gate was standing wide open. That was wrong. Earl was religious about that gate. Had been ever since a stray dog got into the yard and tore up Patsy's vegetable garden 6 years back. He installed a new latch himself, made me come inspect it like it was a building project. "Bobby, tell me this latch is solid." I tested it, told him it would hold through a hurricane. He smiled, like I had handed him a trophy. That gate was never left open. Never. Something pulled at me then. Some instinct that had kept me alive on construction sites for 2 decades. The one that says, "Do not walk under that beam. Do not step on that board. Something is not right." I drove past the house without stopping, parked my truck 4 houses down, tucked under the shade of a sprawling live oak where the cab blended into the shadows. I sat for a moment. Engine off. Windows cracked. The neighborhood sounds drifted in. A dog barking somewhere. Wind through the pecan leaves. And from the direction of Earl's house, faint but unmistakable, the sound of a radio playing country music. George Strait, maybe. Something old and familiar. I climbed out of the truck, left the flowers and the pharmacy bag on the seat, and walked toward the house. Slowly, staying close to the tree line that ran along the property edges. My work boots were quiet on the grass, a skill learned from years of walking construction sites before dawn. As I got closer, I could see into the front yard clearly. And that is when the ground shifted beneath me. Earl was outside, not lying in a hospital bed, not crumpled at the bottom of some staircase with a broken hip. Earl was standing by the garden hose, watering his tomato plants, wearing his faded Spurs cap and those old khaki shorts he refused to throw away. Moving easy, moving fine. No limp, no cast, no pain on his face. Just a 77-year-old man enjoying his Tuesday morning in the sun. I stopped walking. My heart hammered against my ribs like a nail gun firing wild. He was healthy. Completely, undeniably healthy. I circled wide to the side of the house, keeping low behind the wooden fence that bordered the neighbor's property. The side gate was unlatched too. I slipped through, moving along the narrow path between the house and the fence where Patsy's herbs grew in clay pots. Rosemary, basil, mint. Their smell rose up around me, thick and green, a smell that used to mean holiday dinners and laughter. Now it smelled like something rotting underneath. Through the kitchen window, I could see Patsy. She stood at the counter, rolling out pie dough, her apron dusted with flour, humming along to the radio. Healthy. Happy. No sign of a blood sugar crisis. No sign of anything except a woman enjoying a peaceful morning of baking. I pressed my back against the exterior wall, breathing hard. The brick was warm from the morning sun. My mind raced, but my body refused to move. Diane had lied. The words formed slowly in my head, each one landing like a hammer on iron. Diane had lied to me. There was no emergency, no broken hip, no diabetes crisis, nothing. So why were they here? Why had my wife and daughter driven 90 minutes on a lie? The answer came from inside the house, voices drifting through the open kitchen window above my head. Diane's voice first, clear and businesslike. Then Shelby, casual and light. And beneath both of them, underneath their familiar tones, a third voice. A man. Deep, smooth, confident. Laughing at something one of them said. A man I had never heard before. In my father-in-law's house. With my wife and daughter. On a Tuesday morning, when they were supposed to be worried about sick parents. My hand moved to my back pocket. Pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled so badly, I nearly dropped it on the concrete path. I fumbled with the screen, found the voice recorder, and pressed the red button. Recording. Then I moved closer to the window, pressed myself flat against the warm brick, and listened to my world end. I pressed my back against the brick wall so hard I could feel each ridge digging into my spine. The warmth of the Texas sun on that brick did nothing for the cold spreading through my chest. My phone was in my right hand, the red recording light pulsing like a tiny heartbeat. Above me, the kitchen window was cracked open maybe 4 inches. Enough for fresh air. Enough for every word to drift down to me. Clear as a church bell. Diane spoke first. "Did the transfer go through this week?" Shelby's voice came back light, easy, like she was talking about picking up groceries. "Done yesterday morning. 6,000. Same as usual. Went through clean. $6,000. My hand pressed harder against the wall. $6,000 a week disappearing from accounts I had built over 20 years of breaking my body on construction sites. Good. That was the man's voice. Deep, smooth. The kind of voice that belonged to someone who had never poured concrete in 100-degree heat. That keeps us on schedule. "What is the total now?" A pause. Then Shelby again. 180,000. Give or take a few hundred. The number hit me like a steel beam dropping from a crane. $180,000. Gone. Stolen by my wife and daughter, and a man whose name I did not even know. I pressed my free hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My knees felt like they might buckle. I locked them straight, forced myself to stay upright, stay quiet, stay invisible against this wall. The man continued. "And the company paperwork? Where do we stand on that?" Diane answered this time. Her voice was steady, confident. Nothing like the trembling, tearful woman who had stood in my kitchen 2 hours ago. "The mortgage application went through last week. $1.8 million against Gallagher Construction. His signature looked perfect. His signature. My signature. Forged on a mortgage against my own company. The company I had built from nothing, from a single truck and a borrowed nail gun, and a dream that kept me awake at night for years until it became real. $1.8 million they were borrowing against everything I had built. Added to the 180,000 already stolen. My vision blurred at the edges. I blinked hard, forced my eyes to focus on the herbs growing in the clay pot beside my boot. Rosemary. Green and alive. Real. Solid. Something to anchor me, while my world dissolved. "He is not going to check it?" The man again. Casual. Almost amused. Shelby laughed. Actually laughed. The sound cut through me worse than anything else. "Dad will not even notice until it is too late. He is too busy pouring concrete to count his own money. He trusts us completely. He always has." Each word was a nail driven into my chest, not fast like a nail gun, slow like a hammer in the hands of someone who wanted you to feel every strike. He trusts us completely. 20 years of trust. 20 years of handing over my paycheck, sharing accounts, believing that the woman sleeping next to me and the girl I raised from a baby were my people, my foundation, and they had been hollowing it out from underneath me like termites in the framing of a house. The man spoke again. "We need to move faster on the next phase. The timeline is getting tight." "I know." Diane's tone shifted. Harder. Colder. "But we cannot push too fast. Bobby is not stupid. He is just distracted. There is a difference. I needed to see this man. Needed to know who he was. What he looked like. Some evidence, beyond a voice, on a recording. I moved carefully along the side of the house, past the herb pots, around the back corner. There was a narrow alley between the back porch and the detached garage, where Earl kept his old Ford truck. From this angle, I could see the driveway. And there it was. A black pickup truck I had never seen before. Newer model. Polished. Too expensive for this neighborhood. Texas plates. I raised my phone and took 3 photos. The truck, the plates, close up on the plate number. My hands shook, but the images were clear enough. Then I heard the back door creak open. Footsteps on the porch. I ducked behind the garage wall, barely breathing. "I am going to grab those papers from the car." The man's voice. Closer now. Just 10 feet away. I heard his boots on the gravel driveway. Saw his shadow stretch long in the morning sun. Tall, athletic build. Moving with the easy confidence of someone who owned every room he walked into. I stayed pressed against the garage, hidden by the overhang of Earl's old boat trailer. Through a gap in the trailer frame, I watched him walk to the black truck. He opened the passenger door, reached in, pulled out a folder, manila envelope, thick with documents. He tucked it under his arm and walked back toward the house, whistling something low and tuneless. I got one more photo as he passed. Side profile. Strong jaw, dark hair, maybe mid-30s. Wearing clothes that cost more than what my crew made in a day. He disappeared back through the porch door, and I heard it latch behind him. I waited 60 seconds. Counted each one in my head like counting nail pops in a finished wall. Then I moved. Back along the side of the house. Through the side gate. Along the fence line. Into the shadow of the live oaks that line the street. Walking fast but not running. Running would draw attention. Running would make noise. I needed to be a ghost. 3 blocks away. I reached my truck. Climbed in. Closed the door. As quietly as a man with shaking hands can close a door. Then I sat there. The cab was silent except for my breathing, which came ragged and harsh. The yellow roses on the passenger seat stared up at me, stupid and cheerful. Flowers for a woman who was not sick. Medicine for a crisis that did not exist. I almost threw them out the window. Instead, I picked up my phone. Stopped the recording. Pulled up the photos. The black truck. The license plate, clear as day. The man's profile, strong enough for identification. My wife. My daughter. A stranger, with expensive clothes and a folder full of documents. And $180,000 of my money already gone, plus a mortgage for $1.8 million on the company I built with my bare hands. They were not just stealing from me. They were trying to take everything. The money, the company, 20 years of work, sweat, blood, and broken fingers. Everything I had ever built was being dismantled from the inside by the people I trusted most in this world. I sat in that truck for a long time, watching the quiet street. Watching the house where my father-in-law watered his tomatoes. Oblivious. Watching the life I thought I had evaporate like water on hot asphalt. Then I started the engine. Pulled away from the curb. Headed north toward Austin, with steady hands. And a mind that had stopped shaking. And started thinking. Because here is what 20 years of construction teaches you. When you find a crack in the foundation, you do not panic. You do not start swinging a sledgehammer. You assess the damage. You figure out how deep it goes. And then you build a plan to fix it or tear the whole thing down and start over. I was going to find out how deep this crack went. And God help them when I did. By the time I pulled into my driveway on Ridgecrest Lane, the sun was sitting low and orange behind the tree line. The house looked the same as it did every evening. Porch light on. Sprinklers hissing across the front lawn. Everything peaceful. Everything normal. Everything a lie. Diane's SUV was not in the driveway. They were still in San Antonio, probably sitting around Earl's kitchen table with that stranger, counting my money. The thought made my jaw clench so hard my teeth ached. I went straight to my real office. Not the den inside the house. The converted garage out back where I kept the books for Gallagher Construction. Metal desk. Filing cabinet. Laptop. Older than most of my crew members. The fluorescent light buzzed when I pulled the chain. It smelled like sawdust and motor oil and cold concrete. I sat down. Opened the laptop. Part of me whispered, "Maybe you heard wrong. Maybe there is an explanation." I logged into our joint checking account. Set the date range to 12 months. Pressed search. There it was. Electronic transfer. $6,000. Every single week. Sometimes Tuesday. Sometimes Thursday. But always there. Steady as a heartbeat. Going back 8 months. The transfers went to an account called Lone Star Ventures, LLC. I had never heard of it. Never authorized it. 6,000 times 4 weeks times 8 months. 192,000. The extra transfers scattered in between brought the total past 180,000. Exactly what Shelby had said. I closed the laptop and walked to the window facing the backyard. The oak tree Diane and I hung a swing from that tree when Shelby was 3. She used to beg me to push her higher. Higher, Daddy. Higher. Now she was stealing from me like I was just a bank account with a heartbeat. I pulled out my phone. Ray Dawson. Lawyer. One of the best in Austin. But more than that, a friend. 15 years ago, I built his first real house. A 4-bedroom on Barton Creek. We became the kind of friends who do not talk every week, but show up without question when the call comes. 2 rings. Bobby Gallagher. His voice was warm, surprised. You never call this late. What is going on? Ray. I need help. It is bad. The warmth vanished. My office. 7 a.m. I will clear my morning. I hung up before my voice could break. Dialed again. Maria Santos. My accountant for 15 years. Meticulous, honest, loyal, Maria. I need every financial record. Company and personal. 3 years back. Everything. She paused. Bobby. Is something wrong? I do not know yet. How fast can you get them? Tomorrow afternoon. Thank you. I set the phone down and pressed both palms flat against the cold metal desk. The fluorescent light hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Normal sounds for people whose lives were not collapsing. At 8:45, headlights swept across the garage window. Diane's SUV. Doors opening, closing. The performance returning home. I squared my shoulders and walked into the house through the back door, arriving in the kitchen as they came through the front. Diane looked tired. Believably tired. She kissed my cheek. Her jasmine perfume turned my stomach. Dad is doing better. Might just be a bad sprain. Mom's sugar stabilized. I smiled. The muscles obeyed even though nothing behind them was real. That is great news. I was worried all day. Shelby appeared behind her. How did the Morrison signing go, Daddy? Pushed to Thursday. Their legal team needed more time. She accepted that without question. Of course she did. I had never given her a reason to doubt me. That was the difference between us. I told the truth. They collected lies. We ordered Chinese food. Sat around the kitchen table. Diane talked about Earl's upcoming doctor appointment. Shelby showed me a funny video. I laughed in the right places. Asked follow-up questions. Played the role of husband and father with a precision that surprised even me. But inside, behind every smile, I was counting. 180,000. 1.8 million. A man with a black truck. Forged signatures. My company being hollowed out from within. That night, I lay in bed beside Diane. She fell asleep within minutes. Breathing deep, and even, and guiltless. I stared at the ceiling. The shadows from the streetlight played across the plaster in patterns I had never noticed. Shapes that looked like cracks in the structure. Faults I had chosen not to see. Tomorrow. 7 a.m. Ray's office. Then Maria's numbers. I was going to find out exactly how deep this went. Every inch. Every dollar. Every lie. And I was going to find out who that man was. The man in the black truck with the manila envelope and the confidence of someone who believed he had already won. Diane shifted beside me. Her hand found my arm, rested there warm and familiar. I did not pull away. Could not afford to. Not yet. So I lay still in the dark, my wife's hand on my arm, and planned. Ray Dawson's office sat on the 14th floor of a glass tower on 6th Street, downtown Austin. The kind of building I had bid on, constructing twice, and lost both times to bigger firms. I stood in the elevator watching the numbers climb and thought about how strange life was. I built houses for other people. Now, I needed someone else to keep mine from falling down. Ray was waiting in the lobby when the doors opened. He looked the same as always. Tall, lean silver hair that made him look distinguished instead of old. But his eyes were different this morning. Sharp, focused. The way a man looks when he knows something bad is coming and has already decided to fight it. Bobby. He shook my hand, held it an extra second. Come on back. His office was all glass and dark wood. Law books on one wall, framed degrees on another. A view of the Capitol dome through floor-to-ceiling windows. He closed the door behind us and pointed me to a leather chair across from his desk. Tell me everything. So I did. From the phone call yesterday morning to the drive to San Antonio. Earl healthy in the yard. Patsy baking pies. The voices through the kitchen window. $6,000 a week. $180,000 gone. The mortgage on my company. The man with the black truck. All of it poured out of me like concrete from a mixer, heavy and unstoppable. When I finished, I set my phone on his desk and played the recording. Diane's voice filled the office. Did the transfer go through this week? Then Shelby's. 6,000. Same as usual. Dad will not even notice until it is too late. Ray listened without moving. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair and pressed his fingertips together. His jaw was tight. Bobby, this is not a marital dispute. This is criminal. Fraud. Embezzlement. Conspiracy. We are talking felony charges. I know. He pulled up the photos on my phone. The black truck. The license plate. The man's side profile. Who is this? I do not know. That is why I am here. Ray nodded, already reaching for his phone. I am calling Hank Reeves. Best private investigator in Texas. Former Ranger. If this man has a past, Hank will find it. The call was brief. Ray spoke in clipped sentences. Gave the license plate number. Described the situation in broad strokes. When he hung up, he looked at me directly. Hank will have something within a week. In the meantime, you do nothing. You say nothing. You act completely normal. Can you do that? I did it last night. Chinese food and small talk while my wife lied to my face. Good. Keep doing it. The moment they suspect you know, they will destroy evidence, move money, disappear. We need them comfortable and careless. I nodded. It made sense, even though every fiber of my body wanted to drive home and throw those bank statements on the kitchen table. Wanted to watch Diane's face when she realized the game was over. But I had built a company by being patient, by laying one brick at a time. This was no different. That afternoon, Maria Santos called. Bobby, I need you to come see this. Her voice was tight, in a way I had never heard from her in 15 years. I drove to her office, a small suite in a strip mall on South Lamar. Practical, no frills, just like Maria herself. She had papers spread across her desk in neat rows, highlighter marks everywhere. Yellow, pink, orange. A color-coded map of my destruction. Sit down. She pointed to the chair across from her. I sat. First, the transfers. She pushed a highlighted stack toward me. $183,400 over 8 months. All routed to Lone Star Ventures LLC, registered in Delaware, shell company. No real business activity. No employees. Just a mailbox. I knew that part already. It was what came next that stopped my breathing. Second. She pulled out another stack. Someone filed a mortgage against Gallagher Construction 8 weeks ago. $1.8 million. Your name is on the signature line. She looked up at me. But Bobby, That is not your signature. I looked at the document. The handwriting was close. Good enough to fool a bank officer who was not paying attention. But the G in Gallagher was wrong. I always loop my G's. This one was angular, rushed. I never signed that. I know. Maria pulled out one more document. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed it in front of me. And this is the one that scares me, Bobby. I looked down. Life insurance policy. $2 million. Taken out 14 months ago. Standard stuff. I remembered signing it. But the beneficiary line had been changed. 6 months ago, someone filed an amendment. The beneficiary was no longer Diane. It was Shelby. I stared at the paper. The signature on the amendment was another forgery. Close, but not mine. Maria spoke quietly. Bobby, if something happened to you, your daughter would receive $2 million. The room went very still. The fluorescent lights hummed. Traffic passed outside the window. A car horn. A child laughing somewhere. And me, sitting in a strip mall office, realizing that my wife and daughter and a stranger did not just want my money. They wanted me dead. $2 million. That was the price tag they had put on my life. 52 years of work, of building, of loving them with everything I had. And my daughter had decided the fastest path to her future was to make sure I did not have one. I picked up my phone, called Ray. He answered on the first ring. They changed my life insurance, I said. $2 million. Beneficiary is Shelby. Signature is forged. Silence. Then Ray's voice, cold and controlled. Hank starts tomorrow. We are going to find out exactly who this man is and what he is planning. And Bobby, do not eat or drink anything in that house that you did not prepare yourself. Do you understand me? I understood. God help me. I understood perfectly. 5 days. That is all it took Hank Reeves to unravel a con man's entire life. What he found made everything I already knew look like the tip of an iceberg sitting on top of a mountain of darkness. We met at a barbecue joint on the east side of Austin. Small place, no frills, plastic tables and butcher paper, and the thick smell of mesquite smoke hanging in the air. The kind of place where nobody looked twice at two men sitting in a corner booth talking quietly over brisket and sweet tea. Hank was in his early 60s. Barrel-chested, gray crew cut, hands like catcher's mitts. 22 years as a Texas Ranger before retiring into private investigation. He had the kind of eyes that had seen the worst of people and stopped being surprised by it a long time ago. He slid a manila folder across the table without preamble. His name is Colton Hale, 36 years old, born in Lubbock, raised in El Paso, no steady employment in the last decade. I opened the folder. The first page was a driver's license photo. The same face I had glimpsed through the gap in Earl's boat trailer. Strong jaw, dark hair, easy smile, the kind of face that made people trust him before he opened his mouth. What does he do? Hank picked up his sweet tea. He cons people. That is his profession. He finds families with money, usually through the wife or daughter, builds trust over months, then drains them dry. I stared at the photo. How many? That I have confirmed? 3 families before yours. All in Texas. Dallas, Houston, and Waco. He leaned forward. Total damage across all 3. Just over $900,000. $900,000. And now mine on top of it. Hank pulled out a second section of the folder. Surveillance photos. The first set showed Colton and Shelby together. Coffee shop on South Congress. His arm around her waist as they walked. Kissing outside an apartment building on Rainy Street. Sitting close in a restaurant booth. Her hand on his face, his fingers laced through hers. My daughter. With this man, the intimacy was obvious, unmistakable. This was not a business relationship. This was romance. Or at least, what Shelby believed was romance. The next set showed Colton and Diane. Different energy entirely. Coffee shops? Yes. Conversation? Yes. But distance. Professional posture. No touching. Colton leaning in to listen, nodding, playing the role of advisor or coach. He is sleeping with your daughter, Hank said bluntly. Using your wife as an access point. Diane thinks he is some kind of financial consultant helping the family. Shelby thinks he is her boyfriend. He is playing them both. But the real relationship is with Shelby. I pushed the photos aside. Could not look at them anymore. What about the 3 other families? Hank's expression shifted. Darker. He pulled out a separate sheet. The 3rd family. Harold Petway. 70 years old. Retired postal worker in Waco. Lived alone after his wife passed. Colton befriended him through his daughter. Same pattern. Over 14 months, he drained Harold's entire retirement. $340,000. Every penny the man had saved over 40 years of delivering mail. I waited. Something in Hank's voice told me there was more. 6 months after the money was gone, Harold drove to his garage, closed the door, and turned on the engine. The barbecue joint suddenly felt airless. The smoke that had smelled comforting a minute ago now pressed against my lungs like a weight. He left a note, Hank continued. Said he was sorry he was so stupid. That he could not face his daughter, knowing he had lost everything. I set my fork down. Could not eat. Could not do anything except sit there and see a 70-year-old man alone in a garage, writing his last words because some predator had taken everything that gave his life meaning. His daughter, Brenda Petway. Hank slid another photo across the table. A woman, mid-40s, dark hair, strong features. She has been looking for Colton for 2 years. Police could not help. Not enough evidence for criminal charges in Waco because Harold signed the transfers willingly. Did not matter that he was manipulated. The law sees signatures, not the lies behind them. I picked up Brenda's photo. Looked at her face. The determination in her jaw. The grief in her eyes. She had lost her father to this man, and the system had failed her. I want her contact information, I said. Hank nodded. Already wrote it down for you. She will want to help. Trust me on that. He reached into the folder one more time and pulled out the last photo. This one was different from the others. Grainy, dark, shot from a distance with a telephoto lens. Timestamp read 2:14 a.m. It showed a figure crouching near a structure. Metal framework. Scaffolding. My scaffolding. My construction site on the north side of Austin. I recognized the build immediately. The posture. The dark jacket. This was taken 3 nights ago, Hank said. I have been watching your job site since I started the case. He was there for approximately 12 minutes, focused entirely on the scaffolding at the northwest corner. The northwest corner. 3rd level. The exact platform where I stood every Monday morning at 7 a.m. to inspect the progress on the upper floors. The same spot I had stood on for weeks. Same time. Sam routine. Colton Hale had been at my construction site in the middle of the night, crouching near the scaffolding where I stood 30 feet above concrete every single week. I looked up at Hank. His eyes were steady, grim. Bobby, I need you to hear me clearly. Do not go up on that scaffolding. Not until we check it. I heard him. But I was already somewhere else in my mind. Already seeing the bolts. Already imagining what a 30-foot fall onto fresh-poured concrete would do to a man's body. Already understanding that this was not just about money anymore. This was about murder. And the man planning it was sleeping with my daughter. I have worked construction for 20 years. I have seen what happens when a man falls from height. Seen the way gravity takes a body and introduces it to concrete without mercy. A fall from 10 feet can break bones. A fall from 20 can paralyze. A fall from 30 kills. There is no discussion about it. 30 feet onto a concrete slab is a death sentence dressed up as an accident. 5:30 the next morning, I pulled my rental truck into the construction site on Bergstrom Road, North Austin. The Morrison project site sat empty and gray in the pre-dawn darkness. Skeletal framing rose against a sky just beginning to lighten at the edges. No crew yet. No sound, except the distant hum of early traffic on the highway, and the wind whistling through exposed steel beams. I grabbed a flashlight from the glove box and walked toward the northwest corner. My boots crunched on gravel. The air was cool, carrying the smell of fresh lumber and the chalky dust of cut concrete block. I knew this site like I knew my own body. Every beam, every column, every pore. I had walked it 100 times. The scaffolding stood against the northwest face of the building, rising 3 levels high. Metal poles, cross braces, wooden planks at each level. Standard setup. I had inspected it myself 2 weeks ago and signed off. Everything solid. Everything right. I started climbing. Not to the top. Just to the second level where I could reach the connection points of the third platform. The one where I stood every Monday at 7 a.m. to check progress on the upper floors. Same spot, same time, every single week for 2 months. My flashlight beam swept across the connection brackets. First bolt. Tight. Second bolt. Tight. I moved along the platform, checking each point where the third level attached to the frame below. Third bolt. My wrench slipped around it without resistance. Loose. Not finger loose. Deliberately loosened. Backed out 3 full turns so it would hold under its own weight, but fail under the weight of a man. My heart rate spiked. I moved to the 4th bolt. Same thing. Loose. 3 turns backed out. Then the 5th. The 6th. 4 bolts total, all on the same section of platform. The exact section where I always stood. I climbed back down carefully. Stood on the ground and looked up. 32 feet to that platform. Below it, freshly poured concrete from last Thursday's slab work. Hard as stone now, unforgiving as a tombstone, if I had climbed up there Monday morning. The way I always did. The way I had done every Monday for 8 weeks straight. The platform would have held for maybe 10 seconds, long enough for me to walk to my usual spot. Then the bolts would give. The platform would tilt, and I would fall 32 feet onto concrete that I had poured with my own hands. My phone buzzed. Text from Miguel. Boss. Coming in early. Need to grab tools for the Riverside job. Be there in 10. Miguel Hernandez. My foreman for 12 years. Started as a laborer when he was 19, worked his way up through sweat and loyalty and a natural understanding of how buildings go together. I trusted him the way I used to trust my family. The difference was Miguel had earned it every single day. 15 minutes later, his truck pulled in. He found me standing at the base of the scaffolding, flashlight still in hand, staring upward. Boss? He walked over, coffee in one hand, confusion on his face. What are you doing here this early? Everything okay? I pointed the flashlight beam up at the 3rd level. Look at the connection brackets on the northwest section. Tell me what you see. Miguel squinted upward, then climbed. He was faster than me, lighter on his feet. I watched his flashlight sweep across the bolts. A minute later he was back on the ground, his face hard. 4 bolts backed out. He looked at me, eyes dark with something between anger and fear. Boss, this is not wear. This is not vibration loosening. Someone took a wrench to those bolts on purpose. Someone who knows exactly which connections would drop that section under load. I know. If you had gone up there Monday morning. I know, Miguel. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something in Spanish under his breath that I did not catch, but understood the tone of perfectly. Who would do this? I did not answer. Could not answer. Because the answer was my own daughter. My 24-year-old girl who used to climb this exact type of scaffolding when she was 16. Summer after summer, she would ride with me to job sites, bring me coffee in a thermos, scramble up the levels like a cat, fearless and laughing. She knew how scaffolding worked, knew which bolts mattered, knew my Monday routine, And she had handed that knowledge to a man who crept onto my site at 2 in the morning to turn it into a death trap. I called Hank. He answered on the first ring. "Do not touch anything," he said. "I am sending a forensics contact. Document everything. Photos, video, measurements." Miguel and I spent the next hour photographing every bolt, every bracket, every angle. I shot video narrating what we found. Time-stamped everything. When we finished, Miguel looked at me with something I had never seen from him before. Fear. Not for himself. For me. "Boss, you need to be careful. Whoever did this, they are not playing." "I know. Are you going to tell me what is going on?" I looked at this man who had worked beside me for 12 years, who had never lied to me, never stolen, never missed a day without calling. The kind of loyalty my own blood could not muster. "Soon," I said. "I will tell you everything soon. But right now, I need you to trust me." He nodded once. Solid. Simple. "I trust you, boss. Always have." I turned back to the scaffolding and looked up at that third-level platform one more time. 32 feet. Concrete below. My daughter knew I climbed there every Monday at 7. She knew because she used to climb up after me with a thermos and that fearless smile. "Daddy, hold my coffee while I look at the view." I can still hear her voice. 16 years old. Hair in a ponytail. Steel-toed boots 2 sizes too big that she borrowed from the supply trailer. Laughing at the height like it was a carnival ride. Now she wanted me to fall from it. My little girl wanted me to die on the concrete I poured with these hands. For $2 million, and a man who called her sweetheart while planning her father's funeral, I walked back to my truck and sat behind the wheel for a long time. The sun was fully up now, painting the construction site gold and casting long shadows through the framing. A beautiful Texas morning, the kind of morning that used to make me grateful to be alive. Now it just reminded me that someone I loved was trying to make sure I was not. The phone rang at 5 in the morning. In construction, an early call usually means one thing. Something went wrong at the site. Weather damage, vandalism, a pipe burst overnight. You answer fast because every hour a job sits idle costs money. But when I saw Miguel's name on the screen, my stomach dropped for a different reason. "Boss." His voice was tight, controlled. The way a man sounds when he is trying not to scare you. "I came early to grab the tile saw for the Riverside job. I parked behind your truck in the driveway, and I saw something." "What did you see?" "Fluid on the concrete under your truck. Passenger side, near the rear axle. Looks like brake fluid, Bobby. A lot of it." I was already out of bed, already pulling on jeans and boots in the dark. Diane stirred beside me, murmured something, rolled over. I did not answer her. "Do not touch anything," I said. "I am coming out now." The garage was dark and cool. I hit the lights and crouched down next to my truck. The old Ford F-250 I had driven for 16 years. Bought it used when Shelby was 8 years old. She rode shotgun every Saturday morning that first summer, legs too short to reach the dashboard, singing along to the radio while I drove us to the hardware store, or the job site, or wherever the day took us. Now a puddle of reddish fluid spread beneath it like a wound. Miguel was already on his back, flashlight in hand, looking up at the undercarriage. He slid out and stood, his face grim in the fluorescent light. "Brake lines, boss. Both of them. Cut clean." He held up his phone, showing me the photo he had taken underneath. I could see it clearly. 2 lines, severed, not frayed, not corroded, cut with something sharp and deliberate. "If you had driven this morning," he said carefully, "you would have had brakes for maybe the first half mile, until the pressure bled out completely. Then, nothing." Interstate 35. My morning commute. 70 miles per hour in heavy traffic, merging between semis and concrete barriers, with no brakes. I stood there staring at the puddle on my garage floor and felt something shift inside me. Not fear. I was past fear now. What I felt was clarity. The kind of cold, absolute clarity that comes when you finally accept what is happening and decide what you are going to do about it. I called Tommy Lou. He ran a repair shop on South Congress that I had used for years. Good man. Honest mechanic. Rare combination. I told him I was having the truck towed in, and I needed him to look at something specific. An hour later, Miguel and I stood in Tommy's shop watching him roll out from under the lifted Ford on his creeper. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked at me with an expression I had seen only once before, when he told me my transmission was shot back in 2016. Except this was worse. Bobby. Those lines were cut with a blade. Clean as surgery. Whoever did this knew exactly where to cut and how deep. Left just enough fluid in the system that you would have pressure for a few minutes of driving, maybe 5, before total failure. He showed me the photos on his phone. Close-ups of the severed lines. Perfect cuts. Angled so the fluid would drain slowly rather than all at once. This is not amateur work, Tommy said. Someone studied how brake systems function. They wanted it to look like a failure, not sabotage. If you had crashed on the highway, any investigator would have initially written it up as mechanical failure on an older vehicle. I thanked Tommy. Told him to document everything the same way we had documented the scaffolding. Photos, measurements. Written report. He nodded, understanding without being told that this was evidence for something bigger. The police arrived within the hour. A patrol officer took my statement, photographed the brake lines, filed a report. He asked the standard questions. Any enemies? Anyone with a grudge? Any idea who might have done this? No, I said. No idea. The lie tasted familiar now. I was getting used to it. Be careful, Mr. Gallagher. Whoever did this wanted you in a serious accident. Maybe worse. He gave me a case number and drove away. Miguel watched the patrol car leave, then turned to me. His arms were crossed. His jaw was set. Boss. That is twice now. The scaffolding. Now this. Someone is trying to kill you. I know. You need to tell me what is going on. I put my hand on his shoulder. Looked him in the eyes. This man, who had shown up at 5 a.m. because he noticed fluid under my truck, who had probably saved my life this morning the same way he had saved it, by warning me away from that scaffolding. Saturday, I said. Everything ends Saturday. I need 4 more days. Can you trust me for 4 more days? He studied my face for a long time. Then he nodded. 4 days. But if anything else happens before then, I am calling the police myself. Fair enough. I drove my rental car to a quiet parking lot and called Ray. He answered on the second ring. They cut my brake lines, Ray. That is 2 attempts in 1 week. The scaffolding, and now this. Silence. Then his voice, cold and precise. Then we move now. This weekend. Saturday night. We set the trap, and we end this before they try a 3rd time. I have an idea, I said. The Morrison contract. The signing celebration. $4.2 million. If I tell Diane and Shelby I am hosting a dinner to celebrate the biggest deal of my career, they will come. And if Shelby thinks there is a $4 million contract on the table, she will bring Colton. They will not be able to resist. Ray was quiet for a moment. That is good, Bobby. That is very good. Saturday at 7. I will have everything in place. I hung up and sat in the parking lot, watching traffic pass on the access road. Families in minivans, workers in trucks, people living lives where their daughters did not try to kill them for insurance money. I looked down at my hands on the steering wheel. Scarred, calloused, still strong. These hands built houses, built a company, built a life. And now, they were going to build one more thing. A trap. Building a house takes months of planning before you ever break ground. You survey the land. You test the soil. You draw the blueprints 3 times, 4 times, until every measurement is perfect. Only then do you pour the foundation. Only then do you start building upward. Building a trap is no different. I had 5 days, and every single one of them mattered. Monday evening. I came home from work, set my keys on the counter, and found Diane in the kitchen chopping onions for dinner. I leaned against the doorframe and spoke casually. Hey, I have news. The Morrison deal is closing this Saturday. 4.2 million. Biggest contract of my career. She looked up, eyes watering from the onions. Or maybe not from the onions. Bobby. That is wonderful. I want to celebrate. Dinner here Saturday night. Just family. I paused. And Shelby should bring that guy she has been seeing. What is his name? Colton? I would like to meet him. Properly. Thank him for helping you with your parents' situation. Something flickered across Diane's face. Quick. Gone before I could name it. That sounds lovely. I will tell her. That night, Shelby came to my office in the garage, leaned against the doorframe the way she used to when she was 14 and wanted to ask for money. Mom said, you want me to bring Colton Saturday? Yeah. Biggest deal of my career. I want my girls there. And if this guy is part of our family's circle, I should know him. Right? She smiled. That bright, easy smile that used to make me feel like the luckiest father alive. Right. He will be there. Perfect. Saturday. 7 o'clock. I will handle the brisket. She left. I sat in my garage office and stared at the wall. My daughter had just agreed to bring the man who was trying to kill me into my home for dinner. And she had smiled while doing it. Tuesday. Hank called with news that hit like a wrecking ball. Bobby. Colton Hale has a wife. Her name is Amber. They have been married 6 years. 2 children. Mason, age 7. Lily, age 4. They live in a house in Memphis, Tennessee. She is a nurse at Baptist Memorial Hospital. I gripped the phone. A wife. Children. This man had a family waiting for him in Memphis while he slept with my daughter and plotted my murder in Austin. It gets worse, Hank continued. I tracked his movements. Monday through Wednesday, he is in Memphis, playing husband, playing father. Thursday through Sunday, he is here, playing boyfriend to Shelby. The money from your accounts has been flowing to both places, paying the Memphis mortgage, paying Mason's school, paying for his Austin apartment, funding his entire double life with your dollars. I closed my eyes. $180,000. Split between 2 lives built on lies. My money paying for a little boy's school tuition while his father planned my death. Get me her phone number, I said. Amber's. I need to talk to her. Wednesday evening. I sat in my truck, in an empty parking lot, and dialed a Memphis area code. 3 rings. A woman's voice. Tired from what I imagined was a long shift. Hello? Is this Amber Hale? Yes. Who is this? Ma'am, my name is Bobby Gallagher. I am calling from Austin, Texas. I have information about your husband that you need to hear. And I need your help. Long silence. I could hear a child's voice in the background. Faint. Asking for juice. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What has he done? I told her. Not everything. Not the murder attempts. But enough. The double life. The other woman. The stolen money. I told her I had proof. Recordings. Photos. Documents. I told her I was confronting him Saturday night and that I needed her there. Another silence. Longer this time. Then a sound that broke something inside me. She was crying. Quiet, exhausted tears from a woman who had suspected the truth for years but never had the courage to face it. I knew, she said finally. Deep down, I always knew something was wrong. The missing days. The phone calls he would not answer. The money that appeared from nowhere. I am sorry, Amber. You did not deserve this. She took a shaky breath. I will be there. Saturday. Give me the address. I will drive through the night if I have to. Mason and Lily will come with me. They need to see who their father really is. Thursday. I called Brenda Petway in Waco. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. Her voice was guarded. Mrs. Petway. My name is Bobby Gallagher. I am calling about Colton Hale. Silence. Then her voice changed. Sharpened. You found him? I found him. He has been running the same con on my family. And Saturday night, I am ending it. I would like you to be there. When I do. She did not hesitate. Not for 1 second. Tell me where and when. I have waited 2 years for this. My father deserves justice. Friday. Ray's team installed cameras throughout my house. Small devices, pinhole lenses, hidden in bookshelves and light fixtures. Audio and video. Court admissible quality. Hank arranged plainclothes officers. 2 unmarked cars would park on Ridgecrest Lane by 6:30 Saturday evening. I spent Friday night in my garage office, going over everything one final time. The recordings, the photos, the bank statements, the insurance documents, the scaffolding evidence, the brake line report, Brenda's testimony, Amber's existence. Every piece was a brick. And I was laying them into a wall that Colton Hale and my daughter would never climb over. Saturday morning arrived with clear blue Texas skies. Not a cloud. Not a breath of wind. The kind of morning that felt like God was watching. I stood in my backyard at dawn with coffee in my hand, watching the light spread gold across the rooftops. By sunset, my family would be shattered. The truth would be exposed, and 3 people who thought they had won would discover that the man they underestimated had been building something behind their backs the entire time. Somewhere on Interstate 40, crossing from Tennessee into Arkansas, a woman named Amber was driving west through the darkness with 2 sleeping children in the back seat, coming to face the man who had lied to them all. And in Waco, Brenda Petway was already in her car, heading south to Austin, carrying a photograph of her dead father in her purse like a weapon. Tonight, 7 o'clock. My dining room table. The foundation was set. Time to build. 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. I set the dining room table with the same precision I used when laying tile, measuring the gaps between plates, straightening forks until they were parallel. White tablecloth Diane had bought for Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Candles in the silver holders we received as a wedding gift 20 years back. Fine china that only came out for Christmas and special occasions. This was a special occasion. Just not the kind anyone at this table expected. The brisket had been smoking since 5 that morning. 14 hours on low heat. Oak and mesquite. The smell filled the house, rich and heavy. I had rubbed it myself at midnight, standing alone in the backyard, under a sky full of stars, working salt and pepper and garlic into the meat with hands that did not shake. Whatever happened tonight, my brisket would be perfect. A man should take pride in what he can control. Diane moved through the kitchen with easy efficiency. Potato salad, coleslaw, baked beans, cornbread. She hummed to herself while she worked, happy and oblivious. Or maybe not oblivious at all. I no longer knew which version of my wife was real. You went all out, she said, peeling back the foil on the cornbread. This looks like a holiday spread. Biggest deal of my career deserves a proper celebration. I kept my voice light, my face easy, set a water glass at Colton's place setting, and thought about the man who would sit there drinking from it in 2 hours. Shelby came downstairs at 5:30. Black dress, silver earrings, hair done. She looked beautiful. She also looked nervous. Her eyes kept darting to her phone, fingers tapping against her thigh. You look nice, baby girl. Thanks, Daddy. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Is there anything I can help with? Just relax. Enjoy the evening. I studied her face, looking for the girl I raised. looking for anything real underneath the performance. She held my gaze for 2 seconds, then looked away. At 5:55, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Text from Ray. Cameras live. Officers in position. All recording. Ready when you are. I typed back one word. Good. The doorbell rang at 6 o'clock sharp. Shelby practically jumped off the couch. I will get it. She was at the door before I could move, opening it wide. Hey, babe. A man's voice. The same deep, confident tone I had heard through a kitchen window in San Antonio 2 weeks ago. You look incredible. A brief kiss. Then footsteps in the hallway. He appeared in the living room doorway, and I saw him clearly for the first time. Colton Hale. 36 years old. Dark hair styled back, strong jaw, athletic build filling out a button-down shirt that cost more than what my laborers earned in a week. Easy smile. Confident posture. The kind of presence that made you want to trust him before he said a single word. He extended his hand. Mr. Gallagher. Great to finally meet you, sir. Shelby has told me so much about you. I shook his hand. Firm grip. Warm palm. The hand of a man who had loosened bolts on my scaffolding and cut my brake lines and was now standing in my dining room, smiling like a guest at a garden party. Bobby, I said. Call me Bobby. Welcome to our home. Beautiful place. He looked around with that practiced admiration I recognized from every contractor who ever bid against me. You built this yourself? Every nail. 15 years ago. I met his eyes and held them. I build things to last. Something flickered behind his smile. Gone in a heartbeat. He was good. Very good. Diane emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Colton. So glad you could make it. She hugged him. I watched his body language carefully. Polite. Appropriate distance. No lingering. His eyes found Shelby over Diane's shoulder, and something warm passed between them. Shelby was the target. Shelby was the anchor. Diane was just the door he walked through to get there. Should we sit? I gestured toward the dining room. Everything is ready. We settled around the table. Me at the head. Diane to my right. Shelby to my left. Colton beside Shelby. 4 people. 2 of them planning my destruction. 1 of them oblivious. And me. Sitting at the head of my own table, holding the detonator. I carved the brisket. Served plates. Poured sweet tea. Colton complimented everything. The food, the house, the table setting. Charming and easy. Never missing a beat. So Bobby, Shelby tells me the Morrison deal is closing. 4.2 million. He shook his head like he was impressed. That is incredible. You must be proud. 20 years of building up to this, I said. Slicing brisket with steady hands. Everything I have worked for, coming together in one contract. Let us say grace before we eat, Diane said. She reached for my hand on one side, Shelby's on the other. We joined hands around the table. My right hand held Diane's. My left held Shelby's. Both of them soft and familiar. Both of them belonging to people who had betrayed me. Lord, thank you for this food and for this family gathered here tonight. Bless this celebration and the work that brought us to this moment. Amen. Amen. We echoed. I released their hands. Picked up my fork. We ate. Small talk filled the space like drywall mud smoothed over cracks. Colton asked about construction. I asked about his work. He said he was in consulting, helping small businesses grow. I nodded like I believed him. Diane talked about her book club. Shelby mentioned a work project. Normal. Perfectly performed normalcy. I let it go on for 10 minutes. Let them eat my food and drink my tea and sit at my table feeling comfortable and safe. Let them believe they had won. Then I set my fork down. The small clink of metal on china cut through the conversation like a saw blade through pine. Everyone looked at me. Before we celebrate, I said, my voice calm and level. There is something we need to discuss. Diane's smile froze. Bobby, what is wrong? I reached beside my chair where I had hidden a folder that morning. Pulled it out. Set it on the table. Opened it. Bank statements. Highlighted transfers. Yellow marker on every $6,000 withdrawal for 8 months. I need to talk about the $180,000 that has been stolen from me. Silence. Absolute. Complete. The kind of silence that happens right before a building comes down. Diane's fork clattered against her plate. Shelby went pale. Colton's jaw tightened, but his smile held. Barely. I pulled out my phone. And this, I pressed play. My own kitchen filled with the voices recorded in San Antonio. Shelby's voice, crystal clear. 6,000. Same as usual. Dad will not even notice until it is too late. He is too busy pouring concrete to count his own money. The recording played for 30 seconds. Then I stopped it. Looked around the table. My wife. My daughter. The man who had tried to kill me twice. No one moved. No one breathed. But I was not done. The money was just the first layer. And I had built this trap with many, many layers. Diane broke first. Her hand flew to her mouth, and a sound came out of her that I had never heard before. Half gasp, half moan. The sound of a woman realizing the ground beneath her had turned to sand. Bobby, what is this? What are you talking about? Shelby sat rigid in her chair, face drained white as the tablecloth. Her fork was still in her hand, suspended over her plate like she had forgotten how to set it down. And Colton. Colton leaned back in his chair with his arms loose at his sides, still composed. Still wearing that easy expression like this was a misunderstanding that could be talked away. Smooth as fresh concrete that had not yet been tested for cracks, I kept my voice level. $180,000 transferred to a shell company called Lone Star Ventures LLC over 8 months. $6,000 a week. From our joint accounts, I slid the highlighted statements toward Diane. Look at the dates. Look at the amounts. She looked. Her hand trembled as she touched the paper. I did not. Joseph. I can explain. It is Bobby. And no. I am not finished. I pulled out the next document. Set it on the table like laying a brick. Mortgage application. $1.8 million against Gallagher Construction. Filed 8 weeks ago. I turned it so everyone could see. My name is on the signature line, but this is not my signature. Diane stared at the document. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. Someone forged my name to borrow $1.8 million against the company I built with my own hands. I looked directly at Shelby. A company that took me 20 years to build from nothing. Dad, I can. Shelby started. I held up my hand. Still not finished. The third document came out. Life Insurance Policy Amendment. I placed it on the table between the brisket and the baked beans, right next to the candles that cast warm light over evidence of my family's betrayal. 6 months ago, someone changed the beneficiary on my $2 million life insurance policy, changed it from Diane to Shelby. I let that sit for a moment. The signature on this amendment is forged. I never authorized it. Colton's expression had not changed, but I noticed his right hand was gripping the edge of the table. Knuckles going white against the dark wood. $2 million. I continued. Payable to my daughter. Upon my death. Diane turned to Shelby, face twisted with something between horror and confusion. What is he saying? Shelby. What is this? Shelby's mouth opened. Closed. Tears had begun streaming down her face, but she could not form words. I reached beside my chair again, pulled out a second folder, this one thicker. Photos printed on glossy paper. I set the first one face up on the table. This is my construction site on Bergstrom Road. Northwest corner. 3rd level scaffolding. I tapped the photo. 4 bolts were deliberately loosened on the platform where I stand every Monday morning at 7 a.m., 32 feet above concrete. If I had gone up there, I would have fallen to my death. Diane's hands were shaking so badly the ice in her tea glass rattled. Next photo. My truck in Tommy Lou's shop. Undercarriage exposed. And this is my truck. Both brake lines cut clean with a blade. Professional work. Designed to fail. On the highway, at 70 miles per hour. If my foreman had not noticed the fluid leak at 5 a.m., I would have died on Interstate 35. The room was silent except for Diane's rapid breathing and the soft sound of Shelby crying. I looked at Colton. His smile was gone now, replaced by something calculating. Eyes moving between me and the door, measuring distance, assessing options. You did not just steal my money, I said. You tried to kill me. Twice. To collect $2 million in insurance that my daughter would receive upon my death. That is a lie. Colton spoke for the first time. His voice was steady, but tighter than before. I have no idea what you are talking about. I ignored him. Reached into the folder again. The surveillance photos came next. I laid them out one by one across the table like dealing cards. Colton and Shelby outside a coffee shop on South Congress, his arm around her waist. Colton and Shelby kissing on the sidewalk outside an apartment building on Rainy Street. Colton and Shelby in a restaurant booth, foreheads nearly touching, hands intertwined. I watched Diane's face as she processed what she was seeing. The confusion deepened. Then her eyes widened. Then her mouth fell open. These were taken over the past 2 weeks, I said. Your financial consultant, your family advisor, the man who was supposedly helping your parents. Diane stood up so fast her chair scraped backward across the hardwood. She stared at the photos, then at Colton, then at Shelby. You. She pointed at Shelby with a trembling finger. You told me he was helping our family. You told me he cared about me, about us, that he was a professional. Mom. Shelby's voice was barely a whisper. He is your boyfriend? Diane's voice cracked open like a dam. All this time? All those meetings? All those conversations he had with me about independence and taking control? That was all just to get access to your father's money? I let the silence answer for me. Diane spun toward Colton. Her face was unrecognizable now. Rage and humiliation and heartbreak all fighting for control. You sat in coffee shops with me. You listened to me talk about my marriage. You made me think someone actually cared what I felt. And the whole time you were sleeping with my daughter and stealing from my husband? Colton stood slowly. His chair pushed back. His eyes had gone cold, calculating. The charm was gone, stripped away like paint from a wall under a heat gun. This is a misunderstanding, he said. Bobby, I think we should all calm down. And the doorbell rang. Every head turned toward the hallway. Colton's face went white. Not pale. White. The color of a man who has just heard the sound of his own grave being dug. I stood up from the table. Straightened my shirt. My voice was calm. Steady. The voice of a man who had spent 2 weeks building this moment brick by brick. Excuse me, I said. That would be for me. I walked toward the front door. Behind me, I could feel Colton's eyes drilling into my back. I could hear Diane's ragged breathing, Shelby's soft crying. But ahead of me, through the frosted glass panel beside the door, I could see a silhouette. A woman, holding a child on her hip. I reached for the handle. I opened the door. She stood on my porch in the yellow glow of the porch light, a woman in her early 30s with dark circles under her eyes and the kind of exhaustion that comes from driving 8 hours straight through the night, scrubs visible beneath an unzipped jacket, a hospital ID badge still clipped to her chest. She had come straight from a shift, driven through darkness across 3 states, and now she stood on a stranger's doorstep in Austin, Texas, holding her life together with both hands. One of those hands held a little girl. 4 years old, maybe. Blonde curls matted from sleeping in a car seat. A stuffed bear clutched against her chest, its fur worn thin from years of love. The girl's eyes were half closed, head resting on her mother's shoulder. Behind them, a boy, 7, tall for his age, standing slightly behind his mother's leg, wide awake, wide-eyed, looking up at me with an expression that said he understood something bad was happening, even if he did not know what. "You must be Bobby." Amber's voice was quiet, steady, but barely. "I am. Thank you for coming, Amber. I know this is not easy." She shook her head. "It needed to happen. I could not keep pretending." I stepped aside. She walked in, the boy following close, his hand gripping the hem of her jacket. I led them down the hallway toward the dining room. The moment they appeared in the doorway, time stopped. Colton saw her first. His body went rigid like a man who had just grabbed a live wire. Then he stood so violently, his chair crashed backward onto the hardwood floor. The sound made Lily flinch and bury her face deeper into her mother's neck. Mason pressed closer to Amber's leg. "No." Colton's voice came out strangled. Raw. "No. No. No. No." Amber looked at him. Her chin trembled, but she did not cry. "Not yet. You said this was a client meeting, Evan. That is what you told me. That is why I should bring the kids." She called him Evan. I filed that away. Another name. Another lie. Shelby was on her feet, her chair shoved back, her whole body vibrating. She stared at Amber, then at the children, then back at Colton, with an expression of pure, unfiltered horror. "Who is this?" Her voice cracked. "Who are they?" I spoke calmly. "Everyone. This is Amber Hale. And these are Mason and Lily." I paused. Let the silence do its work. Amber is Colton's wife. They have been married 6 years. Mason and Lily are his children. The words hit the room like a wrecking ball through drywall. Everything shattered at once. "Wife?" Shelby's scream was almost inhuman. "You have a wife? You have children?" She spun toward Colton, mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. "You told me you were single. You said you had never been married. You said I was your everything." Colton held up both hands, palms out, like he could push reality away through sheer will. "Shelby, listen to me. This is not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" Diane's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a blade. She had been silent since the doorbell rang, watching everything unfold with the expression of someone being buried alive. "There are children, Colton." "Children," Mason spoke. Small voice, cutting through the adult chaos like a knife through smoke. "Daddy?" His eyes were locked on Colton. "Why is Daddy scared? Why is that lady yelling at Daddy?" Nobody answered him. Nobody could. I moved toward Amber gently. "Ma'am, would you like to sit down?" I gestured toward the empty chair. "Can I get the kids something? Milk? Cookies?" Amber nodded, her arms tightening around Lily. "Mason," she said softly, "go with Mr. Bobby for just a minute. Okay? Mama needs to talk to the grown-ups." Mason looked up at me. I crouched down to his level, the way I used to crouch when Shelby was small and scared and needed her daddy to make the world make sense. "Hey, buddy." I kept my voice warm. "I have got chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen, and I think there might be cartoons on the iPad. Want to check?" He studied my face for a moment, then nodded, took my hand. His fingers were small and warm and trusting. The trust of a child who does not yet know that the people who are supposed to protect him have been lying since before he could remember. I settled him in the kitchen with cookies and Paw Patrol on the iPad. Lily stayed with Amber, already asleep again on her mother's shoulder. When I returned to the dining room, the scene had deteriorated further. Shelby was pacing, hands in her hair, pulling at the roots. 6 years? 6 years? We have been together for 10 months. You told me you loved me. You told me we would get married once we had enough money. The money. I spoke from the doorway. Everyone turned. Let me tell you where the money went. The $180,000 stolen from my accounts. I looked at Amber. Part of it paid your mortgage in Memphis. Part paid Mason's tuition at his school. Part funded his apartment here in Austin. My money built his double life. Monday through Wednesday, husband and father in Memphis. Thursday through Sunday, boyfriend and con man in Austin. Amber closed her eyes. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she made no sound. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. The new car. Noah's school. The addition on the house last spring. She opened her eyes and looked directly at Colton. All stolen. All of it. Colton said nothing. For the first time all night, the con man had nothing to say. No smile. No charm. No explanation. Just a man standing in the wreckage of every lie he had ever told. With nowhere left to hide. Shelby stopped pacing. She stared at Colton with something new in her eyes. Something beyond anger. Beyond heartbreak. It was the look of a person realizing they have been a puppet and the strings are finally visible. You used me. Her voice was hollow. Dead. You never loved me. I was just a way to get to my father's money. Colton opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Then the doorbell rang a second time. Colton flinched. Actually flinched. Like the sound was a physical blow. I straightened my shirt. Looked him dead in the eyes. There is one more person you need to face tonight, Colton. One more ghost. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Shelby whisper, "Who else? Who else is there?" I did not answer. Just kept walking. Because the woman standing on my porch right now had waited 2 years for this moment. 2 years of grief and rage and unanswered questions. 2 years of carrying her dead father's photograph in her purse like a prayer. And tonight, she was finally going to get her answers. The woman on my porch was not crying. I had expected tears. Expected grief or hesitation, or the kind of nervous energy that comes before a confrontation you have imagined 1,000 times. But Brenda Petway stood there with her shoulders squared and her chin raised and her eyes burning with something far beyond sadness. This was a woman who had finished grieving a long time ago. What remained was purpose. She was 45. Dark hair pulled back tight. Strong features that reminded me of the photograph Hank had shown me at the barbecue joint. Harold's features. Her father's jaw, her father's steady gaze, now aimed like a weapon at the front door of my house. Mr. Gallagher. Her voice was controlled. Low. Ready. Bobby. Thank you for coming, Brenda. He is inside. She nodded once. Reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. Held it against her chest, like armor. Then she walked past me into the hallway with the stride of someone who had been walking toward this moment for 2 years. I followed her into the dining room. The scene she walked into was chaos. Diane slumped at the table, face buried in her hands. Shelby standing by the wall, arms wrapped around herself, mascara streaking her cheeks. Amber in a chair with Lily still asleep on her shoulder. And Colton, standing near the window, calculating his exits with the desperation of a cornered animal. He saw Brenda before she spoke. I watched his face. Something shifted. Deep. Primitive. Recognition. Not of Brenda specifically, but of what she represented. Another past. Another victim. Another ghost rising from a grave he thought he had buried. Brenda walked straight toward him. Did not stop until she was 3 feet away. Close enough to see every pore on his face. Close enough that he could not look anywhere else. You remember Harold Petway? Her voice carried through the silent room like a church bell. Waco, Texas. 70 years old. Retired postal worker. 40 years delivering mail. 40 years saving every penny for a retirement he never got to enjoy. Colton's mouth moved. No sound came out. You befriended him through me. Brenda's voice did not waver. Same way you did with everyone else. Found the daughter first. Built trust. Made yourself useful. Made yourself necessary. And then you took everything he had. $340,000. His entire life savings. Gone in 14 months. Shelby made a small sound from her place against the wall. A whimper. But Brenda did not look at her. Her eyes never left Colton's face. And 6 months after you cleaned him out, my father drove to his garage. She paused. Took a breath that seemed to come from somewhere very deep. He closed the door. He turned on the engine, and he sat there until it was over. The silence that followed was absolute. Not even breathing. Brenda raised the photograph she had been holding against her chest, turned it outward so everyone in the room could see. An old man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, sitting in a lawn chair with a small girl on his knee. A grandchild, both of them laughing at something beyond the frame. This is my father. She placed the photograph on the dining table, carefully, gently, like laying a flower on a casket. This is what you killed. Not just a man, a grandfather, a father, a life that mattered. She looked at Colton one more time. He left a note. Did you know that? On the dashboard of his truck. It said 3 words. I am sorry I was so stupid. A tear fell. One single tear down Brenda's cheek. She wiped it with the back of her hand and stepped back. But she was not broken. She was not collapsing. She was standing tall and letting the truth do what she had waited 2 years for it to do. Destroy him. Colton sank into the nearest chair. His legs simply gave out beneath him. The charm, the confidence, the easy smile that had carried him through years of destruction, all of it was gone. What remained was a hollow man with nothing left to hide behind. I pulled out my phone. The room watched me. Every eye, every breath held. I dialed. 1 ring. Detective Reeves. You can come in now. The front door opened within seconds. They had been close. Waiting. Listening through the wire I had worn against my chest all evening. 2 uniformed officers entered first, moving with quiet authority. Behind them, a woman in plain clothes. Detective badge on her belt. Short hair. Sharp eyes. All business, Mr. Gallagher. She nodded to me. We have everything we need. She turned to face the room. Her voice was professional, practiced. The voice of someone who had done this many times before. Colton Hale, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and attempted murder. She stepped toward him. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Colton did not resist, did not speak. The officers lifted him from the chair and cuffed his wrists behind his back. The metallic click echoed through the dining room like a period at the end of a sentence. Shelby Barrett Gallagher. The detective turned. You are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and accessory to attempted murder. No. Shelby's voice broke into a scream. Daddy. No. Please. Do not do this. I am your daughter. Please. Daddy. Please. The officer moved behind her, pulled her arms back. The handcuffs closed around her wrists with that same metallic click. She twisted in his grip, looking back at me with eyes that were 10 years old again, desperate, terrified, begging her father to fix it. Daddy. She had not called me that since she was a child. Not since scraped knees and thunderstorms and monsters under the bed. I turned away. Could not watch. Could not bear to see my little girl in handcuffs. Even knowing what she had done. Even knowing she had tried to kill me. They led them out. Colton silent, head down. Shelby sobbing, feet stumbling. Through the hallway, out the front door, into the flashing lights that painted my house red and blue. I stood at the dining room window and watched the police cars pull away. Tail lights disappearing down Ridgecrest Lane. Taking with them my daughter, my trust, And the last piece of the life I thought I had. Behind me, Diane sat motionless at the table. Brenda stood with Harold's photograph pressed against her heart. And somewhere in the kitchen, Mason's small voice drifted through the silence. "Mama, is Daddy coming back?" Nobody answered. The red and blue lights faded down Ridgecrest Lane until they were just a memory flickering between the oak trees. Then they were gone, and the street returned to the kind of quiet that only exists in suburban neighborhoods on Saturday nights when everyone else's lives are still intact. I stood at the front window for a long time, watching nothing, feeling everything settle around me like dust after a demolition. When you bring a building down, there is always that moment after the collapse when the air is thick with particulate, and you cannot see 3 feet in front of your face. You just stand there and wait for it to clear. That is where I was, standing in the dust, waiting to see what was left. Mason's voice pulled me back. He had wandered out of the kitchen, iPad forgotten, cookie crumbs on his shirt. His small face was pinched with confusion. Where did Daddy go? The police took him. Is he in trouble? I crouched down, looked into this boy's eyes. Brown eyes. Colton's eyes. But innocent. Still innocent. Your daddy had to go talk to some people tonight, buddy, but your mama is right here, and she is going to take care of everything. Okay? He studied my face the way children do when they are deciding whether to believe an adult. Then he nodded. Okay. I stood and walked to where Amber sat in the dining room chair, Lily still asleep against her shoulder. The little girl had not woken through any of it. The screaming, the handcuffs, the slamming doors. She slept through her father's arrest with her face pressed against her mother's neck and her stuffed bear dangling from one small fist. Amber looked up at me. Her eyes were dry now. The tears had passed, replaced by something harder. The look of a woman who had just made a decision she could not unmake. I am taking them home tonight, she said quietly. Filing for divorce, Monday morning. I nodded. Let me walk you out the back, away from the street, in case there are still officers out front. I led them through the kitchen and out the back door. The night air was cool. October in Texas. Stars overhead, clear and indifferent. At her car, Amber buckled Lily into the car seat while Mason climbed in on the other side. I reached into my wallet and pulled out everything I had. $500 in 20s. Pressed it into Amber's hand. For the drive. For gas and food. For whatever they need. She looked at the money. Then at me. Her chin trembled. I cannot take this. Yes, you can. That man used my money to build your life without your knowledge. The least I can do is make sure you and those kids get home safe. She closed her fingers around the bills. Bobby, I am sorry. For all of it. You did not do anything wrong, Amber. You were a victim too. Go home. Take care of those babies. She nodded. Got in the car. Started the engine. Mason's face appeared in the back window, small and pale, watching me as they pulled away. I raised my hand. He raised his. Then the car turned the corner and they were gone. I walked back inside. The house felt different now. Larger. Emptier. Like the walls had expanded to fill the space left behind by the people who used to live here. Brenda was in the hallway, her purse over her shoulder, Harold's photograph tucked safely back inside. She had been waiting. Bobby. She took both my hands in hers. Squeezed. Her grip was strong and warm. Thank you. She looked up at me with eyes that were finally, after 2 years, at peace. My father can rest now. Because of you, I squeezed back. I am sorry I could not do it sooner. You did it. That is what matters. She released my hands and opened the front door. Paused. Take care of yourself, Bobby. The hard part is not over yet. I knew what she meant. She disappeared into the night. Her car started somewhere down the block. Headlights swept across the lawn. Then she was gone too. Back to Waco. Back to a grave she could finally visit without rage choking her. I closed the front door, locked it, turned around. Diane was sitting on the kitchen floor, not on a chair, on the floor, back against the refrigerator, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around herself, crying. Not the dramatic sobbing from earlier. This was quieter, deeper, the kind of crying that comes when everything you have told yourself for months finally collapses under the weight of truth. I stood in the doorway and looked at her. This woman I had slept beside for 20 years. This woman who had kissed my cheek every morning, who had packed my lunch for construction sites, who had held my hand at my father's funeral, who had betrayed me anyway. Bobby. Her voice was wrecked, barely audible. I am so sorry. I did not know about the insurance. I did not know about the scaffolding or the brakes. I swear. I only knew about the money. She looked up at me with ruined eyes. I thought it was just the transfers. Shelby said it was temporary. Said we would pay it back. I did not respond. Could not find words that matched what I felt. So I just stood there. I was lonely, Bobby. She whispered it like a confession. You were always working, always at the site. I felt invisible. And Colton, he listened. He made me feel like someone actually saw me. I looked at her for a long time. My wife. 20 years. Then I turned and walked into the dining room. The table was still set. Candles burned down to stubs, wax pooled on the silver holders. Brisket sat cold and untouched on the platter. The potato salad had gone warm. Chairs overturned. Documents scattered. Highlighted bank statements mixing with photographs of my daughter kissing the man who tried to kill me. I stood in the middle of it all. My house. Built 15 years ago with these hands. Every nail. Every board. Every tile on the floor beneath my boots. I built this place to be a home. A foundation for a family. Now it was just a building. Walls and a roof and empty rooms holding the echoes of everything that had just been destroyed inside them. I picked up Harold's photograph from the table. The old man smiling with his grandchild. I held it for a moment. Then I set it down carefully and walked to the back door. Stepped outside. Sat on the porch steps. Looked up at the Texas stars. The night was quiet. The neighborhood was asleep, and I sat alone on the back porch of a house that no longer felt like home, wondering if this was what justice was supposed to feel like, because it felt nothing like victory. It felt like standing in the middle of a demolition site after the last wall has fallen. Dust in your lungs, silence in your ears, nothing left but the foundation. Just the foundation. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of sitting in a courtroom under fluorescent lights, while strangers in suits dissected my family's destruction for the public record. 3 weeks of reporters in the gallery scribbling notes. 3 weeks of walking past cameras every morning and saying nothing because Benjamin had told me to say nothing. 3 weeks of watching my private devastation become everyone else's entertainment. Travis County Courthouse. 4th floor. Courtroom 6. I memorized every detail of that room, the way a prisoner memorizes his cell. Pale, wood paneling. The judge's bench elevated above everything like a pulpit. 12 jurors in uncomfortable chairs trying not to show emotion. The American flag hanging limp in the corner. The clock on the back wall that seemed to move slower every day. Day 4. I took the stand. The prosecution walked me through everything. The phone call that Tuesday morning. The drive to San Antonio. Earl healthy in the yard. The voices through the kitchen window. The recording. The bank statements. Maria's analysis. The forged mortgage. The insurance change. The scaffolding. The brake lines. 2 attempts on my life. 4 hours. Every detail extracted and laid out under oath, like organs on an operating table. Then came cross-examination. Shelby's defense attorney, a woman in a gray suit with sharp eyes and a sharper voice. Mr. Gallagher, would you describe yourself as a present father? I provided for my family every day for 20 years. That is not what I asked. Were you present? Emotionally available? I worked 60-hour weeks to build a company that could give my daughter everything she needed. And in those 60 hours, where were you? At dance recitals? At school events? At the dinner table? I built a company so my family would never go without. She paused, looked at the jury. So your daughter felt desperate enough to turn to a stranger for help rather than come to you. Why do you think that is, Mr. Gallagher? I had no answer that would satisfy her. No answer that would satisfy myself. The question sat in my chest like a nail I could not pull out. Week 2. Brenda Petway took the stand. She told Harold's story in a voice that did not break once. 70 years old. 40 years delivering mail. $340,000 gone. A note on the dashboard. I am sorry I was so stupid. The courtroom was silent when she finished. One juror wiped her eyes. Another stared at Colton with undisguised contempt. 2 other victims followed. A retired teacher from Dallas. A widower from Houston. Same pattern. Same charm. Same systematic destruction. By the time the 3rd victim finished testifying, the jury was not looking at Colton like a defendant anymore. They were looking at him like a predator. Week 3. Shelby took the stand. She was thinner than when I had last seen her. Prison clothes replaced by a borrowed suit that did not quite fit. Her hair was pulled back simply. No makeup. She looked 20 years old again. Young. Lost. The prosecutor asked her directly, "Did you put the idea to steal from your father into motion?" Shelby closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears fell. Yes. Why? She stared at her hands in her lap. I owed $60,000. Bad investments. A man I trusted before Colton took my money. I was drowning. I could not make rent. I could not pay my credit cards. I moved home because I had no other choice, and I was ashamed. She looked up. Too ashamed to tell my father. Too ashamed to ask for help. The prosecutor pressed. And Colton Hale? He found me at my lowest. Said he could help. Said he had a system. That we would just borrow from Dad's accounts and replace it before he noticed. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. It started small. Then it grew. Then Colton said we needed more. Needed the insurance money. Needed the company. And by then I was in too deep. I could not say no. I was afraid of him. Afraid of what he would do. Did you know about the scaffolding tampering? Long pause. The entire courtroom held its breath. Not before it happened. Her voice was barely audible. But after. When Dad's brakes failed, Colton told me what he had done. Both times. And I did not go to the police. I did not warn my father. I kept quiet. She was sobbing now, shoulders shaking. The borrowed suit crumpling around her like paper in the rain. And I sat in the gallery watching my daughter confess to choosing a con man over her own father, and thought the one thought that would haunt me longer than anything else in this entire nightmare. She could have just asked me. 20 years of building that company. And she could have walked into my garage office any evening and said, "Daddy, I am in trouble. I need help." And I would have written the check that same night. No questions. No judgment. $60,000 to save my daughter from drowning. But she never asked. And now we were here. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. 6 hours of deliberation. Colton Hale. Guilty on all counts. Fraud. Embezzlement. Conspiracy. 2 counts of attempted murder. 15 years. Ever. 2-4. Shelby Marie Gallagher. Guilty on all counts. Fraud. Embezzlement. Conspiracy. Accessory to attempted murder. 5 years. Diane Patricia Gallagher. Having pleaded guilty to reduced charges of fraud and conspiracy. 3 years. The judge's gavel fell 3 times. 3 sentences. 3 lives shattered by choices they made. With clear eyes and willing hands, they led Shelby out in handcuffs. She did not look back this time, did not call my name, just walked with her head down and her shoulders caved inward like a building folding in on itself. I stood up, walked out of the courtroom, down the hallway, through the lobby, past the cameras and the reporters calling my name, through the glass doors and onto the courthouse steps. Texas sunshine hit my face. Warm. October gold. The sky was that impossible blue that only exists in central Texas, in autumn. I stood there and breathed. Just breathed. Ray appeared beside me, put his hand on my shoulder. "It is over, Bobby." I looked at the sky. The trees along Congress Avenue turning red and gold. The people walking past on the sidewalk, living lives unburdened by courtrooms and betrayal. "No," I said quietly. "It is not over. This part is over. The next part is just beginning." He squeezed my shoulder and said nothing, because he understood. The trial ends. The sentence begins. For them behind bars. For me out here in the world, learning how to live without the family I thought I had. I walked down the courthouse steps and into the afternoon light. Alone. But standing. They say time heals everything. That is a lie told by people who have never had their foundation ripped out from under them. Time does not heal. Time just teaches you how to carry the weight without falling. Teaches you which muscles to use, which thoughts to set down, which mornings to simply get through 1 hour at a time. 6 months after the trial, I sold the house on Ridgecrest Lane. Could not live there anymore. Not in the dining room where I had watched my daughter get handcuffed. Not in the kitchen where Diane sat on the floor and told me she was lonely. Not in the bedroom where I had lain awake for weeks, listening to my wife breathe and wondering if she was dreaming about my funeral. The house sold in 9 days. A young couple with a baby on the way. They walked through the rooms and saw possibility. I walked behind them and saw ghosts. When I handed over the keys, I did not look back. You cannot look back at a demolition site and expect to see the building that used to stand there. My new apartment sat on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse in East Austin. Small, clean. White walls, concrete floors. Big windows facing east, so the morning sun poured in like liquid gold. I kept it simple. A couch, a bed, a desk where I worked in the evenings. No family photos on the walls. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Just clean lines and open space and the smell of fresh paint that meant something new. Gallagher Construction survived. Ray's legal team dismantled the fraudulent mortgage within weeks. The judge voided it entirely once the forged signatures were proven. The company was mine again, whole and clear, but I could not run it alone anymore. Did not want to. So I did something I should have done years ago. I made Miguel Hernandez my partner. We signed the papers in my garage office on a Tuesday morning. Same metal desk. Same fluorescent light, buzzing overhead. Miguel sat across from me and stared at the partnership agreement like it was written in a foreign language. "Boss, I cannot." He shook his head. "This is your company. It is our company now." I slid the pen across the desk. "You saved my life twice, Miguel. Once with the scaffolding, once with the truck, and you kept this company running for 3 months while I sat in courtrooms and therapy offices. You have earned this." He picked up the pen, looked at me. His eyes were wet, but his hand was steady. Then he signed. Gallagher and Hernandez Construction. The name felt right, felt solid. Therapy started in January. Dr. Ramirez. A woman in her 50s with calm eyes, and a small office near the university campus. Plants on every surface. Soft lighting. The kind of room designed to make broken people feel safe enough to fall apart. The first session, I could barely speak. Sat in the chair with my hands clasped between my knees and stared at the carpet. "Where do you want to start?" she asked. Where did I fail? She leaned forward. Bobby, you did not fail. Your daughter made choices. Terrible choices. But they were her choices, not yours. You cannot control another person's decisions, not even your child's. But I should have seen it. Should have been home more. Should have noticed she was in trouble. And if you had been home every evening, worked 30 hours instead of 60, would that have changed who Colton Hale is? Would that have changed your daughter's pride? Her refusal to ask for help. I had no answer. We met every Tuesday for 6 months. Slowly, week by week, I unpacked 20 years of a life I thought I understood and rebuilt it into something honest, something I could actually carry. Wednesday evenings, I joined a support group. Survivors of family fraud. Small church basement on the east side. 12 people in folding chairs, drinking bad coffee and telling stories that made mine feel less lonely. A retired teacher whose son forged her checks for 4 years. A truck driver whose wife opened credit cards in his name while he was on the road. A grandmother raising her grandchildren because their mother had drained the college fund and disappeared. Different details. Same wound. The betrayal of trust. By blood. I did not speak the first 2 weeks. Just listened. Let their stories wash over me. Let myself feel less like the only man in the world stupid enough to be robbed by his own family. 3rd week I shared. Kept it brief. Daughter. Theft. Murder attempts. Trial. Prison. The group nodded. They understood without needing explanations. That was the gift of that room. Nobody asked why. Nobody said you should have known. They just said, we understand. And that was enough. In March, I started teaching. A free evening course at Austin Community College. Protecting your business. From fraud. Even from family. The title was too long, but I could not figure out how to shorten it without losing the point. First night, 8 people showed up. By week 4, 35. Word spread. People brought friends, neighbors, elderly parents. I stood at the front of that classroom and taught them what I wished someone had taught me. How to set up alerts on accounts. How to verify signatures. How to have hard conversations about money with the people you love. How to trust without being blind. After the 5th session, a woman approached me. 70s. Silver hair. Hands trembling as she gripped her purse strap. Mr. Gallagher, my son has been writing checks from my account. 2 years now. She looked at the floor. I knew, but I was afraid to say anything. Afraid of losing him. I gave her Ray's card. Told her she was not stupid. Told her she was brave for saying it out loud. She hugged me so tight I felt her ribs through her sweater. Whispered thank you through tears. I thought about that hug for days. It reminded me why I kept showing up. Why any of this mattered. A letter arrived from Shelby in April. Handwritten on prison stationery. I held it for a long time. Turned it over. Studied my name in her handwriting on the front. Familiar loops and curves from a hand I had watched grow from crayon scribbles to cursive. I put it in a drawer. Unopened. Maybe someday. Not today. One morning in March, I woke before dawn and lay in bed watching the light change on my ceiling. The apartment was quiet. No one beside me. No one down the hall. Just me and the sound of Austin waking up outside my windows. And I realized something had shifted. The weight was still there. Would probably always be there. But somewhere in the past 6 months, between the therapy sessions and the support group meetings and the classroom evenings and the early mornings on construction sites with Miguel beside me, I had learned how to carry it, not easily, not gracefully, but steadily. The way you carry a beam across a job site. One foot in front of the other. Balance and forward motion. I could carry it now. And that was enough. The drive to Gatesville took 3 hours and 12 minutes. I know, because I counted every one of them. I left Austin before dawn. Coffee in a thermos I had poured myself. Windows cracked to let the October air settle my nerves. The highway stretched flat and endless through the Texas hill country, past limestone bluffs and cattle gates, and small towns where people waved at strangers from their porches. I thought about turning back at least 4 times. Once near Lampasas, I actually pulled onto the shoulder and sat there with my hands on the wheel, engine idling, watching a red-tailed hawk circle above a freshly cut hayfield. I had not spoken to my daughter in 11 months. The Mountain View unit sits behind razor wire and pale concrete walls that look like they were poured without pride. I know concrete. I know when a man builds something because he cares, and when he builds it because someone told him to. This place was the second kind. I signed the visitor log, surrendered my phone and keys, passed through a metal detector that beeped at my belt buckle, and followed a correctional officer down a hallway that smelled of industrial cleaner and stale air. They brought Shelby into the visitation room, wearing a white uniform 2 sizes too large. Her hair was shorter. Her face was thinner. She had dark circles under her eyes that reminded me of her mother after long nights with a colicky baby 24 years ago. She sat down across the metal table and folded her hands the way she used to do before piano recitals, pressing her thumbs together to stop them from shaking. Neither of us spoke for a long time. "You look thinner," I finally said. "The food is terrible." A small smile. "Quick and gone." "Dad, I did not think you would come. I almost didn't." She nodded. Her eyes dropped to the table. "I wrote you a letter. I know. It is in my drawer. You did not open it." "No." Another silence. A guard coughed somewhere behind us. A fluorescent light above our heads buzzed with a faint, irritating hum, the kind of sound that tells you the ballast is failing and nobody has bothered to fix it. "I need you to hear something," I said. I leaned forward, elbows on the cold metal. "What you did almost killed me." Not almost. It would have killed me. The scaffolding, the brakes, the insurance. You handed a stranger the blueprint to my life and helped him tear it apart. She pressed her lips together. A tear ran down her left cheek, but she did not wipe it. "But you are still my daughter. And I have spent a year learning that carrying hate is like carrying a beam uphill with no destination. It does not build anything. It just breaks your back." "I am sorry," she whispered. "I know that is not enough." "It is not," I said. "But it is a start." I reached across the table and placed my hand flat on the metal surface. Palm up. She looked at it for a long moment, then placed her fingers on mine. They were cold. I squeezed once and let go. We talked for 43 minutes. She told me about a GED program she had enrolled in, about a counselor named Darlene who made her write in a journal every night. She asked about the company. I told her about Miguel, about the partnership, about the new crew. She asked about her mother. I told her Diane had moved to her sister's place in Corpus Christi, and that I had not spoken to her since the sentencing. Shelby nodded slowly, absorbing that the way soil absorbs rain after a long drought, not all at once but in patches. When the guard called time, I stood and looked at her one more time. "When you get out," I said, "if you want to rebuild, you come find me. But you come honest. No shortcuts, no lies. Foundation first." She nodded. Foundation first. I walked out of that building into bright Texas sunshine and sat in my truck for 10 minutes before I turned the key. 6 weeks later, I hired a 23-year-old kid named Derek, who had served 18 months for armed robbery and could not find work anywhere in Travis County. He showed up to the interview in borrowed boots and a shirt ironed so hard the collar was stiff as cardboard. I asked him one question. "Can you show up every morning at 6 and do exactly what Miguel tells you?" He said yes. He meant it. 3 months in, he was framing walls faster than men, with 10 years on him. I hired 2 more after that. Men who had served time, paid their debt, and needed someone to hand them a hammer instead of a lecture. Miguel called it Bobby's Second Chance Crew. The name stuck. By spring, the fraud prevention class had 35 regular attendees and a waiting list. The community college gave me a bigger room. A local television station ran a 3-minute segment that led to invitations from 2 other schools. I said yes to both. On a warm Saturday morning in April, 1 year and 6 days after the dinner that ended my old life, I laced up my running shoes and drove to Lady Bird Lake. The trail was crowded with joggers and cyclists and young families pushing strollers. I ran 3 miles along the water, slower than I used to, breathing harder than I liked, but finishing. I stopped near the Lamar Boulevard Bridge, hands on my knees, watching the morning light hit the downtown skyline. Cranes swung on 3 different projects I could see from where I stood. Somewhere in that city, concrete was being poured and steel was being welded, and someone was checking a level to make sure the foundation was true. That is the only lesson worth keeping. You can lose money. You can lose trust. You can lose people you thought would stand beside you, until the dirt covered your box. But if the foundation holds, you build again. Different. Smaller. Maybe. But yours. My name is Robert Gallagher. I am 53 years old. I build things for a living. And today, for the first time in a long time, what I am building is mine. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and leave a comment below. And remember, trust the people you love, but always verify the numbers.